Welcome back, everybody. We are here, and we're in another special time. We're still in the NFL playoffs. It is NFL divisional, this divisional round this weekend. But let's get through the wild card. Let's talk about the wild card weekend. So many interesting games, matchups happened over this last wild card weekend, and so many interesting thoughts that come to my head. So we're gonna start with the first playoff game. Chargers, Texans. Um, Coming into this, I wasn't really sure who I had winning. I had the Chargers winning, but it was really confusing on how each team could play because both teams have kind of been on the same level of playing field. Especially Houston over these last couple of weeks, and they've came in and they shut down the Chargers and they beat him in every way. Herbert, probably the worst game I've ever seen him play. 14 for 32, 242 yards, a touchdown, and four interceptions. I know two of them were tipped off. I don't remember much about the other two. I would have to go back and look again. They weren't able to run the ball. 9 carries, 26 yards for J.K. Dobbins. Gus Edwards 7 for 22. They didn't really get much. The only bright side of this game, or for the Chargers, was Lad McConkey with 9 catches for almost 200 yards and a touchdown. And then you see how after that it's Will Dissly with only 2 catches, DJ Chark with only 1 catch, Tucker Fisk with a catch. It just keeps getting worse down the list. Quentin Johnson, he quit dropping balls. I said he needed to have himself a pretty good game, and he didn't. Palmer he wasn't barely even seen at all. But the Chargers though are on a good track. I believe. I think the Chargers they overachieved this year, which is a good thing. They're 11-6 was their regular season record, and then now they have something to look forward to going into the offseason. Now, if one of the biggest priorities is getting rid of some of them veteran players, Khalil Mack would be one of the first guys I'd let go. Um, just get some of these veteran guys off, and I would potentially be looking to get rid of Joey Bosa as well to find something. Hell, they were able to get rid of Austin Eckler and Keenan Allen so fast that I would be looking to get rid of them too as well, um, just to help upgrade the team, get the team into a better position. Because the Chargers right now, there's a couple of things that they still need. They need a big receiving core. They need to upgrade a lot on the offense if they want to make a run for next year. Because let's be honest, that offense was the main reason why they didn't stay in the game. Houston, though, they played really well. They came in, and this was probably one of the most impressed I've seen a team, or for this Houston team this year. Nico Collins had himself one hell of a day, 7 catches, 122 yards, and a touchdown. Um, C.J. Stroud looked pretty good. Joe Mixon looked phenomenal. And just, of course, the defense was able to come in. Derek Stingley with 2 picks. Eric Murray with an interception. Just big plays coming from all around that defensive side. Will Anderson with a sack. D'Amico Autry, Mike Edwards Jr., or Edwards Jr., my bad. Getting sacks. This Texans defense, um, needs some credit because they've been able to keep themselves in games when the offense hasn't been able to play well. um, Now they have a big task this upcoming week in the divisional round of the playoffs, and I'll talk about here in a little bit. Um, so they have a big task coming up, and we'll talk about it. But if they would have played like this all season, I probably would have had them go into the Super Bowl or something, the way they played. Um, Going into the next playoff game, the Baltimore Ravens versus the Steelers. I think we all kind of figured how this game would go. Baltimore came in and they just destroyed them up and down the field. The running game was a huge difference. Derrick Henry 2 touchdowns, almost 200 yards. Lamar Jackson with almost 100 yards rushing. The pass game wasn't really there, but they didn't really need it. If they're and that's one of the good things about this playoff football is if, and this is where you really show if your team is really made for the big spot, like for the big time. Because even though the Ravens they can pass, but they can run even better, and when you need to get into those cold weathers, especially with Baltimore, you know, and they're already in cold weather, and they have to deal with teams like Kansas City and Buffalo, and hell, maybe at some point they play Denver in the playoffs again at some point in these next couple of seasons. Going into it, you need to have a good running game. Because if you can't pass, you gotta rely on the running game, and they relied on it all game, and they were able to win off that. Um, the Steelers, we've seen them collapse midway through the season, and there's no really other way. Like we all kind of expected it, and people are now questioning Mike Tomlin and if the Steelers should keep him or get rid of him. Well, I'm going to say right now, they're not going to get rid of him. There's no logical reason to. The only reason people have is because he hasn't won a playoff game in 8 years. And I can see why people would get mad over that. But when you're an organization or hell, even if you're organization or if you're like Green Bay, they have stockholders, or you have boosters for high school teams or boosters for college teams, they don't really care about what the result is at the end of the year. Mostly, they just want to see have good records. But going and they've made the playoffs consistently almost every year, and there's the one thing is they've been able to get kicked out of that first round and get demolished. And if I was the Steelers, I would look into that, see how you can improve the team. Because I feel like that one of their biggest things is they have, ever since Big Ben retired, they've just been slowly downhill. Well, it started with Le'Veon Bell. When Le'Veon Bell, and when he had his holdout for the year, he left for the Jets. And then Antonio Brown went in crazy. Juju Smith-Schuster, he left. He's nowhere to be found right now. He's bouncing off team to team, trying to get win Super Bowls. Ring chasing pretty much, and then Ben Roethlisberger retiring. The Steelers had to build up this team again, and Mike Tomlin, the way he has done that, not many head coaches could do that. But even though they've had the same result in the playoffs these last couple of years, the way he's been able to rebuild after having to get rid of Le'Veon and from that 2016 span to when Ben Roethlisberger retired. Just how many players they've lost in that time frame, but how many they've been able to gain and try to rebuild. How they brought Russell Wilson, they gave him a chance when not many other teams would, and look where he went. Justin Fields, they put up on Justin Fields. He went 3-1 as a starter, I believe. So going into this next season, I wouldn't really I wouldn't think about firing or getting rid of Mike Tomlin, but I would be looking into getting. Looking into some big changes coming soon. And then, another thing, looking at the quarterback situation, Russell Wilson or Justin Fields. Wilson, he played pretty well. Except for these last couple of games when they needed them to win, they've lost. He hasn't played well. But up to that point, before they start having the losing streak, he was playing really well. Now, would the result be the same if they had Justin Fields at quarterback this whole season? I don't know. But if I was Mike Tomlin, I would try to go all in on Justin Fields. But also, Russell Wilson, could he have another year in him? I don't know. You get him some weapons maybe, but you can't just be throwing to George Pickens all game. George Pickens, he can't be your only player. We've seen what happens when you can't get him on the field. It's a travesty for him. Um, so this upcoming, week for this last week for Pittsburgh has been a roller coaster for them. Going into the Sunday games, the Broncos and the Bills. Broncos, they had the first good score. Bo Nix looked fantastic. And then after that, it's just the Bills' defense. They just suffocated them all game after that. Josh Allen looked phenomenal. James Cook looked phenomenal. And then, of course, the defense. They looked really well all game, keeping Denver in sync. And Denver is a lot like the Chargers. We didn't expect them to go out and win a Super Bowl their first year. They're in this first, really big year for them. Because Chargers, I wasn't really expecting them to win, many games, but they won. They went to the playoffs. I wasn't expecting them to win the Super Bowl, but they've achieved to what many people thought wouldn't happen. And Denver, and you look at Denver Broncos team, and I didn't really think they were gonna have a shot either, because of how the roster looked. But the defense, they showed out. They played really well. One of the best defenses this year. And then Cortland Sutton been able to hold the team on his back when it comes to receiving. One of the most underrated receivers in the game. Philadelphia Eagles, Green Bay Packers. The Eagles and the Packers. Jordan Love struggled, throwing 3 interceptions in the process. The Eagles didn't look as good as many people would expect them to against this struggling Packer team over the last couple of weeks. But at the end of the day, they got the win. Now, if we're going to have to see the Eagles in another Super Bowl or going to see them in these next couple games, we're going to have to see some major improvements, especially with the passing game. Going into with the Packers, many people had questions about Jordan Love over these last couple of weeks. And question if he is able to be a starting quarterback. And I could see he has what it takes to be a starter, and be potential. And I'm not saying as big as Aaron Rodgers or Brett Favre, but he has a chance to be great. And if we're gonna have to see him be great, we need to see him be great on a consistent basis over these next couple of seasons that we watch him, with this big contract. We're gonna have to see something coming out of him. But I understand, they struggled against a really good Philadelphia Eagles defense. This Eagles defense has been probably one of the best defenses I've seen in a long time from Philadelphia. The Washington Commanders versus the Buccaneers, the game of the week. This was the most exciting game of the week. Probably because it this was the only non-blowout. Washington came in, and Jaden Daniels he put the team on his back. They won their first playoff game in 19 years. Just they've had the way they were able to play the whole game, and both teams were able to hold time on each other. Especially Washington. Washington had 35 minutes of possession time, so they were having long drives and keeping themselves into this low scoring game. And they had 70 plays or 69 plays compared to Tampa Bay's 44 plays, and this was still a 3-point game. So, like I said, Washington they kept themselves on a steady. How would I say it? They made sure they kept with them all game. And Baker Mayfield, He looked phenomenal when he needed to be. Tampa Bay, these last couple of years, well, these last 2 years that Brady hasn't been with them, they've been able to come in and they've been able to perform well. And under Todd Bowles, I'm still questioning a lot. His time management throughout the Commanders game was very bad, but he still helps a lot with the defense. And that's one of the reasons why they're still here. The offense, under a new offensive coordinator, they're already back into the playoffs. Baker Mayfield, man, I've said this a lot with Cleveland. With bad organizations make bad mistakes, and they did with Baker Mayfield. He's been able to revive his career in Tampa Bay, and it's been kind of fitting to see how good Tampa Bay has been able to be these last 2 seasons. And then last game, the Rams versus the Vikings. This Vikings team, I said they reminded me a lot of the 2021 team. But this was probably the biggest fraud case I've ever seen in my life. They and especially with Sam Darnold, he played so well a lot during the season. And then the two major games they need him to perform at his highest, he doesn't play well. And in this game alone, against the Rams, almost every sack he took, he held the ball for like forever. And the Rams, they're not a team to not look at. Like, they're an underrated team. Sean McVay, the way and like I was saying with Mike Tomlin, the way he's been able to build the Steelers around since the Big Ben era has been gone, the way Sean McVay has been able to keep this team rolling and keep getting better players and keep helping or developing players into stars has been a real magic. He's a miracle worker, I would say. And when the Rams are at their best, not many teams, I don't think, could beat them. They play really well when they have a big chance to win. And then Matthew Stafford, he's still slinging it well. And Kyron Williams had a good game. And then, in the Cooper Cup, in this game, he only had one catch, and it was either Puka Nacua or Tyler Higbee been able to be the major guys that Stafford looked forward to in this game. But going into the NFC or the divisional round, the Texans and the Chiefs, they played each other on Christmas. Chiefs beat them by 7 or 8. I think Chiefs are going to win again. There's one thing I know is you don't bet against Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs. You don't bet against Tom Brady in the playoffs either. Because you never know what could happen. And so I think the Chiefs, they're going to come away. They've had 3 weeks of pretty much 3 weeks of rest already for this game. And Texans, they're coming off a huge win off the Chargers. So I think Chiefs are going to win. I think it's by a pretty good margin, majorly because of the rest. The Lions play the Commanders. I don't really think this is going to be much of a close game. I think this is going to be more of a blowout. Detroit, like I said, they've had a couple weeks to prepare for this game. And this is now Jaden Daniels and Dan Quinn's first big hump as in Washington. And we're going to see how that team plays. But I think Detroit's going to win. Commanders, I think they're going to have some hope, but Detroit's going to come away with the win. We have the Rams and the Eagles. Last time these two teams played, Saquon ran all over them. But this was also a team that also was dealing with injuries most of the season. I still think Eagles will win. Saquon Barkley, he's going to show out like he always does. And then at some out of nowhere, we're gonna get that AJ Brown, Jalen Hurts connection, and that's what's gonna seal him for that. So I have that, and then we have the game of the week, the Bills and the Ravens, two MVP runners facing each other. And regardless of what happens in this game, we're gonna have a good battle between these two. And we know the MVP is a in season award, but we all know whoever wins this game is gonna get the award. And they're in Buffalo, and there's a potential chance of snow. Both teams can run the ball. The Bills are more better with it on the screen side, and they can make the screen plays work with James Cook. But if Derrick Henry is not on his top notch, I think Bills are going to sweep him away. Because I think they can stop Lamar. If they can't stop Derrick Henry, then there's a chance that Ravens go out with a win. But I do think Buffalo will come out with the win. I think they'll win by 3 points. A low-scoring but good rushing type of game, especially with the chance of snow in the game. So this has been... We're going to have another good week of football. Our college football national championship game is on Monday. And I will have a video about that soon. And also a video regarding the potential of a new Dallas Cowboys head coach. Good, interesting thoughts on that one. See y'all soon. Peace.